Hello, lovelies. How are you doing today? This is our second transit report for today. It's an overview because today we move into a new gate, gate 34. We had line 6 of the 14th gate earlier on today. That was at 0037, so just past half past midnight. And I'm working on GMT, remember? And now, today, I would like to introduce you to gate 34. So gate 34 is a sacral gate. It is, you can see it here on the screen. It is an individual gate and it is part of the integration channel. So integration means that it doesn't just have one harmonic like all the other sacral gates do. They are all just dealing with a single gate on the other end of the channel. And so they are generating through a very specific channel, a very specific energy. So here you can see the integration channel. It's a 4-part system, and it is sort of like the backbone, really, of the body graph. And it is concerned with the self and with the survival of the self. So the 34, as you can see, it connects to the 57, and the 57 is in the splenic system. This is the brown triangle on the left-hand side there. The 34 connects to the 10, which is the yellow diamond in the yellow diamond there, and also up at the 20th gate, which is the brown square. That's the throat center. So we have the splenic system, the G center, the throat center, all connecting in to the sacral. When we're looking at the whole channel, the whole integration channel, you'll notice there is also a channel there between the 57 and the 20. That is not integration. That is individuality, which is, integration is part of individuality, but the 5720 is not part of integration. So it's a very complex channel. Yes, so let me stop sharing and I will tell you a bit about gate 34. It's complex. It's very complex. It empowers the splenic center, but it can also empower identity, and it can empower the throat, and all of them together or in any combination, which means there is an enormous demand on the 34th gate as the power source for integration. The 3420 is one of 3 oppositions in the wheel. That means they are both a polarity and a harmonic. So it's the other end of the channel and it's also the opposite in the wheel. Okay, so we've come across this very recently with the 4323, just a couple of transits back. The other one is the 3740. So that means that the 34 is invariably accompanied by the 28th gate. Always in a Sun-Earth or a nodal configuration, you will always find the 2. It is always possible to have the 34 without the 20, but it is more usual because of this way that it configures with the Sun-Earth. The 3420 is the only pure manifesting generator channel. This is the only way that the throat and the sacral meet directly without having to go through any of the other centers. Integration is the backbone of the survival system of our species, and everything about the nature of looking at integration allows us to see the basic criteria for humans to be able to survive. Gate 34 empowers the intuition of the 57th gate, which is all about how we survive. This is the archetypes for survival. It is called the channel of power. And it's a little bit of a channel that is, well, I'm all right. I know how to survive. Don't really care about anyone else. You can follow me if you like, but I'm not taking you with me. It's that kind of energy in that 3457. So it's very powerful. And integration is about self-empowerment. It only becomes empowerment like the rest of individuality if there is a 38 and or a 28, either in the chart or in the auric environment. Otherwise, on its own, it's about self-empowerment, which is not a bad thing. It's just a thing. I mean, we don't have to have a judgment about it at all, but it's one of the qualities of integration that is really useful to know. So the intuitive empowerment that we get from the 5734 can lead to the perfected form of the 3410. And this is the following of one's own convictions. And then ultimately to the ability charismatically to be able to operate existentially in the now and deal with the world as it is. And this is through the 3420. So a very powerful gate. You'll hear that over and over in the next 6 days. Above the lines, it says, power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. And of course, it doesn't always serve the common good. And this goes back to operating correctly or not. One of the main things about the 34th gate is it needs to be busy. If you have that 34 in a defined sacral center, then you have to recognize the use of your generating power is something that's going to be correct only when it comes out of response. It's the response that is going to allow you to generate the correct archetype or to allow you the correct fulfillment of your convictions, to allow you to operate correctly in the now. All comes back to responding correctly. 34th gate as a sacral gate is unusual in that it is asexual. Its energy is almost exclusively available for the survival process and the process of perfecting the form and of all the things that can be found within integration. The difficulty is for those who have the 34 in an undefined sacral center, because then obviously the sacral is going to be conditioned through all of these expressions. And out of that conditioning, we have the not self strategy of never knowing when enough is enough. That is the not self strategy of an open sacral center. And so these are people who do not know when to stop displaying their power, or they do not know when to display their power. And more than that, really, the display of power is not consistent for them, which can be deeply frustrating. Because it's inconsistent, that can lead to all sorts of other dilemmas. So the 34th gate is about the capacity to be able to operate in the now in a way which enhances our survival. This is a real key. And it means for anyone who carries this gate that it is really essential, particularly as a generator, to operate correctly as yourself, to operate out of response. And in operating out of response, you're honoring your strategy. And then there will be the potential to really display power when it serves the common good. This is a gate of pure, unconditioned power. It is a power ready for display, available for use. Such power is never to be underestimated. This is the essential fuel of individuation. The sacral is second only to the throat center in terms of its complexity. And like the throat, it both moves us and provides us with a voice. The movement is rooted in what is termed the sex drive. It is in fact actually a very repetitive frequency. The defined sacral takes its walks, it shuffles its papers, and it cleans the house, and it can do all of these things compulsively. It's a frequency. It is not the metamorphosis that is possible through the throat. And the sacral has its voices in the same way that the throat does. They can moan, they can sigh. Here in the 34, it's about grunting and growling. It's quite a primal force. Integration is a primal channel. So this is the power to be independent and the energy of conviction. It is the power of the great, which determines whether individuation can be maintained. It's an enormous energy resource, and it's not aware. The channel it creates with gate 57 is called the channel of power. It is the empowerment of the human archetype, one of the primary functions of gate 34. And the definition to the 57 is essential for awareness. The power of gate 34 without the guidance of awareness can wreak havoc, especially through the channel of charisma, the 3420, which is where the destabilizing impact of the 34 is so commonly felt because it is expressed out into the world. And this is the channel that we have all through this transit. So the power of the 34 can be a bit relentless. When it's defined to the throat, it must manifest. Charisma is what we call the release of individual power in the now. The channel 3420 is a design where thoughts must become deeds. But don't misinterpret this keynote as meaning thoughts only being to do with the mind. It's in actual fact a reference to any of the awareness centers. The ajna certainly is to do with the mind. The splenic is the body and the body's awareness, the body's intelligence. And the solar plexus is the spirit, or it will be one day, our spiritual awareness, one day soon, coming to a solar plexus near you. The channel of charisma, when not defined to an awareness center, is open to conditioning from any awareness. And in the instant of identification with that awareness that's conditioning it, it will turn that awareness into deeds. The irony is that charismatic individuals who seem to epitomize personal power are so often profoundly manipulated in their lives. This is such a juicy energy, this 3420. And many people will look at it and want some of that for themselves. And if there are things like that, it's an unconscious activation for someone, which wouldn't be the case as we're looking at it now. But if you have got someone that has it unconsciously defined, they're not necessarily aware of that power, but other people will be. And it's very tempting to co-opt it. And because it's so healthy for the 3420 to be busy all the time, then that's one way of them getting rid of their energy and burning it off. But that's not necessarily going to be correct. So correctness always comes back into whatever is being done, whatever is driving our design. This is the gate of might. There's no question about that. It is part of the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix. You might have heard of this cross. It's getting quite a lot of airtime now in many human design circles. It is the first cross that will actually change its nature in 2027. We have the cross of Maya and the cross of planning leaving us, and we have penetration and sleeping phoenix coming in. So when the mutation comes in and it starts in the 55th gate, then this is when the phoenix will rise up, sleeping no more. Ra did say that it would change its name in 2027. So I guess it will go from the sleeping phoenix to either the rising phoenix or the phoenix. Power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. Sounds nice, huh? What is the common good? This is always a question that should be asked. In this context, it means the power that is inherent in this gate, it should be used for two things, really. And one is to maintain individual survival. That's for the common good. It's very important to see that individual survival is good for everybody. And as a result of individual survival, the maintenance of the human mutative capacity. Both the 34 and the 14 are here to ensure the power to mutate. Mutation comes through individuality. So we moved from the 14 in the line 6 to the first line of the 34, of course, and we have stepped into a different process here. But a continuing process in many ways, partly because it's still individuality, but also because we're on a wheel and the wheel never stops turning. This is now the nature of the energy for survival itself. Gate 34 is here to keep us alive, to enhance the survival of all individuals. It is literally there to fuel life itself. The power to individuate comes out of the 34th gate. I had a conversation, I thought it was very interesting. I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine last week. His name is Hagen. I'm exploring the Godheads with him. He's taking me through the process. He's so wise about all that. He's an amazing resource. And in the nice way. I'm not sure if it's nice to say someone's a good resource, but he is. He's so knowledgeable. Anyway, we were discussing the 34th gate and its name, the power of the great. What does that great mean? What is it referring to? So my feeling is that it has something to do with the ego, even though the sacral isn't connected to the ego. and the voice actually told Ra that if the sacral and the ego were connected, we would be immortal. And that is not for us, not as Homo sapiens intransitus. The Eon, they will have a channel between those two centers, but that's like 200 million years in the future. So we don't really need to worry about that over much. It's not something we're going to experience, and that's it. Anyway, back to the great and the ego. My reasoning is this. So the taming power of the great is gate 26, which is an ego gate. And it does specifically refer to the ego. The first line of gate 34 is the bully. This could be a bit of a not self egoic trait, perhaps. The channel with the 57 is called the channel of power, and it's a bit of a fuck off channel in many ways, because it's, as I said before, it's like, I'm here, I can survive, I know how to survive. Yeah, you do what you like. So again, I mean, it's maybe a bit not self, that is the nature of the channel, but it's, maybe there's some slight egoic thing in there as well. And then the channel that it has with the 10, the 34 10, which is called the channel of exploration, but it's all about following one's own convictions. You see that in someone who is expressing some kind of not self qualities. It can be extremely egoic, especially when it starts trying to get everybody else to follow their own convictions. Follow my convictions too, because I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing. So again, it can bring in that kind of egoic thing. So maybe this whole power of the great is all about making sure that the ego isn't part of that, actually. I'm not sure. I feel there's a good story to tell around it. But, I remembered back in Gate 1, in the first line, it says that creation is independent of will. So I wonder if here in Gate 34, we have power is independent of will. And then it is freed up to serve the common good. So what do you think? What do you think? Am I way off on this? I'm not sure. Sometimes I sit with it and it's like, well, it makes perfect sense. And other times I look at it and think, nah, nah, I'm missing something there. I would appreciate it if you have any feedback on that. And yeah, it would be fun to have a little chat about that, maybe in the comments section, if you feel like it. It might just refer to the power of the sacral center overall. I might be reading too much into it, but yeah, it's fun to pick these apart and then go, yeah, okay, nothing there, leave it alone. Walk away from gate 34. Okay, so the grounding for this particular transit is coming from gate 20, as we know, contemplation. This is the gate of the now, with the recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action. Right action, anytime we see something like right action or anything like this, it means really that it's been done correctly according to type, strategy, and authority. That's really what it comes to. So the channel we have through this transit is very powerful. You might be picking this up. It's a pure manifesting generator energy. It's often really quick to move into action. And even though it is the only voice of the sacral in terms of, being connected to the throat, it sometimes moves into action so quickly that it doesn't have time to respond verbally, which is a bit ironic, really. You could say that its action is its response. So the 20 is a throat gate that says, I know I am now. And there can be much potential for blurting here again, as with the 4323. Maybe more so because there's no awareness between the 20 and the 34. It's just power of putting something into action. At least the 2343 has got that awareness of the Ajna center up there. But unless there's a 57 present, we have no awareness down here with a 3420. This is the fourth individual gate in a row, and each of those individual sun gates has had its earth grounding in another individual gate. We had the one with the 2, the 43 and the 23. We had and that was a polarity and a harmony, of course. Then we had the 14 with the 8, and now we have the 34 with the 20. Powerfully individual start to this quarter of mutation. How do these activations feel to you? Are you feeling anything through these activations? Is it comfortable to be so steeped in individuality, especially if you have a lot of collective circuitry or tribal activations? Maybe you feel a little bit out of step with this energy right now. But don't just look at your channels. Look at any specific placements that you have in your chart. And I just have the 3740, as many of you know. I only have one channel, but my personality sun is in 61. And I have quite a lot of individual mutative activations. So there is individuation in my chart, individuality to be experienced. So how does that feel for you? What have you got going on? You know, are you feeling maybe a bit more empowered than usual? Or is this season a little bit heavy with the melancholy that can come in with individuality? You know, and the sort of knowledge of mutation can be quite heavy for people. I'd be curious to know if you feel like you'd like to share that. Now, because we're looking at gate 34 through the sun's transit, and we have this channel with gate 20, the design of a manifesting generator, I have a poem I would like to share with you. It was written by a generator friend of mine, and her name is Surrenda Kuut, and she writes some very beautiful poetry. Oh, generator, if you only knew how fortunate you are to have your grunting sounds that guide you through light and dark, a state of not knowing, without goal, but with every grunt aligning your soul. In a world where you are pressed to use your mind to find your way, you search and seek but never find. Oh, generator, if you only knew how fortunate you are. Although it is not easy to free fall into this life force, it might take you everywhere. It doesn't have a because. This state of not knowing without goal, but every grunt aligning to your soul. Oh, generator, if you only knew how fortunate you are by being available to the life force every second of the day and waiting for your response to show you the way. Step by step, your cosmic imprint becomes visible, your life as a piece of art, by living your unique part in a state of not knowing, without goal, but with every grunt aligning to your soul. Satisfaction is the reward for living in this utter vulnerability of not knowing who you are and coming from so far. Oh, generator, if you only knew how fortunate you are in your state of not knowing, without goal, but with every grunt aligning to your soul. Thank you for joining me. Go gently.